Night did not fall suddenly over the Vatican. It settled slowly, like dust in an abandoned chapel, soft at first, then thick enough to change how the air felt in the lungs. The stones of the courtyard still held the day's warmth, and the walls glowed faintly under torchlight, as if remembering older fires. Bells had finished their evening call, leaving behind a silence that felt practiced, rehearsed, and deeply intentional. It was the kind of silence meant to prepare people, not comfort them. The gathering began without announcement. No music marked the moment. No voice explained why so many figures stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the high arches. They came because they were expected to come. Attendance was not written, yet absence would be noticed. Faces remained calm, trained into expressions of reverence, though eyes drifted often toward the raised platform at the center of the courtyard. It had been constructed earlier that day, quietly, by workers who did not speak while they built. Candles lined the edges of the platform in careful symmetry. Their flames trembled, not from wind, but from the presence of so many bodies breathing together. The smell of wax mixed with stone and old incense, creating a scent that belonged neither to prayer nor to celebration. It was something in between, something unresolved. Above, the windows of the surrounding buildings were dark, as if the Vatican itself had chosen not to watch. At the far end of the courtyard, a door opened. It did not creak. It moved smoothly, like a well-rehearsed thought. Two figures stepped forward, their forms mostly hidden by heavy ceremonial garments. One walked with certainty, each step measured and slow. The other followed, head slightly lowered, moving as though guided more by expectation than choice. No one spoke. The silence thickened, becoming almost visible. This was called a wedding night, though no joy rested in the words. It was a union only in the language of ritual, not of hearts. Those who stood watching understood this, even if they had never allowed themselves to think it clearly before. They had been told this ceremony preserved order. They had been told it honored tradition. They had been told many things, and over time, repetition had softened their questions into quiet acceptance. The two figures reached the platform. The one who walked first turned slightly, offering a gesture that was neither kind nor cruel, simply precise. The second figure stepped forward alone. A hood was lifted, revealing a face pale in the candlelight. The expression was calm, almost distant, like someone listening to a sound far away. This calm unsettled the watchers more than fear would have. Fear could be explained. Calm could not. A voice began to speak. It was not loud, yet it carried easily across the courtyard. The words were old, shaped by centuries of repetition. They described duty, witness, and the necessity of public knowing. The ceremony, the voice explained, was not meant to be hidden. Its power came from being seen. Every eye present played a role. Every breath taken in silence was part of the binding. As the words continued, the gathered figures realized, as some had realized before, that they were not guests. They were participants. Their watching was required. Their stillness was demanded. The discomfort tightening in their chests was not an accident. It was part of the design. This ritual needed unease the way fire needed air. The candles flickered again, casting long shadows that climbed the surrounding walls. The platform seemed higher now, as if the ground itself had subtly shifted. The second figure stood motionless, hands folded, posture perfect. Nothing in their stance suggested resistance. That absence of struggle created a heavier weight in the air, one that pressed down on every observer. The voice paused. In that pause, the courtyard felt exposed, as though stripped of meaning. Then the ceremony moved forward, and everyone understood that this night, once begun, would not allow itself to be forgotten. The ritual progressed with deliberate slowness, each movement separated by long pauses that forced the watchers to sit inside their own thoughts. Time stretched, becoming something soft and unreliable. A gesture that lasted seconds felt endless. A silence that followed felt even longer. The candles burned lower, wax pooling at their bases like quiet surrender. The voice spoke again, now describing the nature of witnessing. To see, it said, was to agree. To remain was to accept. The gathered figures felt these words settle over them, not as commands, but as statements of fact. No one stepped back. No one turned away. The courtyard held them gently, like a net woven from tradition and fear. On the platform, symbolic objects were presented. Each was lifted slowly, shown to the crowd, then set down with care. Their meanings were not explained. They did not need to be. Everyone present had learned them over years of careful silence. These symbols spoke of control, of continuity, of the belief that order required sacrifice. Seeing them together, arranged so calmly, made the idea feel disturbingly reasonable. The second figure was guided through a series of motions. None were violent. None were hurried. That was what made them so unsettling. The ritual did not rely on force. It relied on certainty. The hands that directed each step were steady, almost gentle. The lack of visible cruelty confused the watchers, forcing them to confront a deeper discomfort. This was not brutality as they recognized it. This was something quieter, something harder to name. As the ceremony continued, the crowd began to change. Shoulders stiffened. Breathing slowed. Some faces showed strain, others blank devotion. A few eyes glistened, though no tears fell. Crying would have broken the shape of the moment, and everyone understood the importance of that shape. The ritual needed their restraint as much as their presence. A chant began, low and rhythmic. It did not ask for response. It did not allow for interruption. The sound wrapped around the courtyard, echoing softly off stone. The words spoke of binding and belonging, of a union that transcended individual desire. Listening to it, the watchers felt something shift inside them. Not belief, exactly, but resignation. The sense that this had already happened, many times before, and would happen many times again. The second figure's calm never faltered. That calm became the center of the ritual, more powerful than any spoken word. It suggested acceptance, or perhaps something deeper, something like understanding. The watchers wondered, quietly, whether that understanding made the ceremony easier or harder to endure. The thought lingered uncomfortably, unanswered. When the chant ended, the silence that followed was profound. It felt heavier than before, dense with shared awareness. Everyone knew the ritual had reached its turning point. From here, there would be no symbolic distance, no comfortable abstraction. The meaning of the ceremony would become unavoidable. The voice returned, softer now, almost reflective. It spoke of continuity, of how the watching eyes ensured the ritual's survival. Without witnesses, it said, the ceremony would lose its power. Without shared memory, it would fade. The crowd understood then that they were not merely observing history. They were carrying it forward, whether they wished to or not. A final gesture was made on the platform, slow and deliberate. The candles dimmed further, as if responding. The ritual did not end with a declaration or a blessing. It ended with a shared stillness, a collective holding of breath. In that moment, the watchers felt the full weight of what they had seen, settling quietly into them, where it would remain. The end of the ritual did not bring release. No one moved at first. The courtyard remained frozen, as if motion itself had become inappropriate. The platform stood unchanged, but its meaning had shifted. What had been a place of ceremony now felt like a marker, a reminder etched into space. Slowly, the voice spoke one last time. It did not announce completion. It offered no comfort. It simply acknowledged what had occurred. The words were careful, chosen not to inflame emotion, but to contain it. This, the voice suggested, was how such things endured. Not through force, but through careful framing. The second figure was guided away, disappearing through the same door from which they had entered. There was no farewell, no acknowledgement of the crowd. Their departure felt final, not because it was dramatic, but because it was quiet. Silence followed them, stretching until it filled the courtyard completely. Only then did the watchers begin to move. Not all at once. One step here, a turn of the head there. Each movement felt tentative, as though they were unsure whether motion was allowed. The ritual had trained them well. Even freedom felt structured. As people began to leave, they avoided each other's eyes. Shared experience had not created closeness. It had created distance. Each person carried their own version of the night, shaped by personal fear, belief, or doubt. None of those versions could be spoken aloud. Language would have failed them anyway. The courtyard emptied slowly. Candles were extinguished, one by one, their smoke rising in thin, twisting lines. The platform remained, unbroken, waiting to be dismantled before dawn. Workers would come, just as silent as before. By morning, there would be no visible sign of what had taken place. The stones would look the same. The air would feel lighter. Yet something had changed. Those who had watched carried a new awareness, one that settled into daily life with uncomfortable ease. In conversations, they would pause at certain words. In prayers, they would hesitate. The ritual had not demanded belief, but it had planted memory, and memory was more persistent. Some would justify what they had seen. They would call it necessary. Others would avoid thinking about it altogether. A few would quietly struggle, feeling a tension between what they had been taught and what they had felt. None would speak openly. The silence surrounding the ritual extended far beyond the courtyard. The Vatican returned to its rhythms. Bells rang. Visitors came and went. Life continued with practiced grace. To an outsider, nothing appeared amiss. That was the ritual's greatest strength. It did not disrupt the surface of things. It settled beneath them, unseen but influential. At night, some of the watchers dreamed of candlelight and stone. They dreamed of standing still, unable to move, while something important happened just out of reach. They woke with a sense of quiet loss, unable to name what had been taken. These dreams faded over time, replaced by routine, but they never vanished completely. The ritual did not seek to shock. It did not need to. Its power lay in its calmness, its certainty, its refusal to acknowledge doubt. By presenting horror without chaos, it made it easier to accept. By demanding witnesses, it ensured survival. And so the Forbidden Wedding Night lived on, not as a story told aloud, but as a shared silence, carried by many, protected by none. Years passed, and the memory of that night softened around the edges. Details blurred. Faces faded. Yet the feeling remained, steady and persistent. It surfaced unexpectedly, in moments of stillness, in the echo of footsteps on stone, in the scent of candle wax drifting through a chapel. Those who had watched grew older. Some gained authority. Some withdrew into quiet corners of life. All carried the same unspoken understanding. They had been present at something meant to endure precisely because it was not discussed. Silence became its shield, and routine its disguise. Occasionally, someone new would sense it. A question would almost be asked, then carefully swallowed. The Vatican had a way of teaching restraint without words. The walls themselves seemed to remember, guiding behavior through atmosphere alone. This was not fear exactly. It was familiarity with boundaries. The platform no longer existed, but the courtyard remained. People crossed it daily, unaware of what had once stood there. Sunlight fell where candles had burned. Rain washed the stones clean, again and again. The physical space healed easily. Human memory was less cooperative. For some, the ritual became a point of quiet reckoning. They began to understand that horror did not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrived wrapped in ceremony, supported by tradition, and made acceptable through calm repetition. This realization did not bring anger. It brought clarity, and with it, a heavy responsibility. The Forbidden Wedding Night did not need to be repeated often. Its power lay in its rarity. The knowledge that it could happen again was enough. That knowledge shaped decisions, maintained order, and discouraged resistance more effectively than any open threat. In time, even the watchers questioned their own memories. Had it really been so unsettling? Or had silence amplified their feelings? Doubt crept in, smoothing the sharpest edges. This, too, served the ritual. Uncertainty weakened resolve more gently than denial ever could. Yet something remained untouched by doubt. A quiet understanding that public witnessing had been the true heart of the ceremony. To be seen was to be bound. To watch was to become part of the structure that allowed it to exist. That truth settled deeply, shaping how those individuals moved through the world. The story of the Vatican's Forbidden Wedding Night was never written down. It did not need to be. It lived in posture, in pauses, in the careful way certain subjects were avoided. It lived in the shared instinct to look away at the right moment, and to remain still when stillness was required. And so the ritual endured, not as a spectacle, but as an atmosphere. Calm. Controlled. Horrifying in its quiet efficiency. A reminder that the most powerful horrors are not those that scream, but those that ask only that we watch, and stay.